Yesterday's training session marked the end of an era for me, really. It's basically the last slot of my training log. You're seeing it right now. So that's the start. There's the first page, Texas Method, 2015, December 2015. So that whole training log, I don't even know how many pages this thing is, maybe 96 pages, whatever the stock standard thing is. I bought another one yesterday to continue on, but basically it marks the end of an era for me. So this first notebook that I filled out, I guess, I don't know, took me from, squatting whatever, 150, 160 to 205 in a span of, let's say, 2016 was basically the start of it, really. December 2015, the end of it. So really, 5-year journey, let's say. And I've gone from 160, 165, something like this, all the way to 205. So in that period, that's a long time of training. In that period, I went from not knowing anything about training to studying methods, reading text, listening to people that are, kind of the goats of the sport, and just trying to accumulate data, accumulate ideas, and make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure if I was under a coach, say Louis Simmons, my progress would be a lot better. But as I've always said, this thing for me is not just a physical journey. It's always been also a intellectual thing. I actually want to study this thing. I want to understand how things work. I want to understand the systems involved. It's a long time. In this period, the number one thing that's kind of plagued me in my progress has been the hip pain. Now, initially, I didn't really know what it was. It would come and go. But then as I've kind of approached 180, 190, 200, these things started happening more and more. I would literally put in a really good block of training, push really hard. I'd get the hip pain. I would kind of pull back, lose some strength, and this pattern would kind of just come and go for a very long time. On top of all of that, I had 2 basically serious injuries. So at the start of this logbook, training log, I was actually playing basketball as well. There was a span of 1 year where I had, fractured one ankle, and then a year later also ruptured 3 ligaments of the other ankle. So put, those 2 periods together, there was probably at least, I want to say, 3-4 months of not training properly or not squatting at all, and probably up to 6 months of just not really having the range of motion in my ankles to actually, squat properly. This is when I bought the Olympic weightlifting shoes. This is where I started kind of researching, do I need heels, do I not need heels, how do I improve, my dorsiflexion. It was a long journey. And then there was also a period where I got so fed up with the TFL pain that I just gave up squatting altogether. So before this squat everyday journey began, I actually spent, I want to say, at least 6 months, probably even longer, maybe even 9 months. I would have to go back and check, of absolutely no squatting at all. The TFL just basically devastated me, and I just got sick and tired of hitting my head against the wall. And so I kind of got frustrated and gave it up. And in that space, I just focused on deadlifting. And funnily enough, I connect the dots now. Funnily enough, that period meant no TFL pain at all. So it was only the squatting that was causing it. And so by the time, I kind of washed away the TFL pain, I was really, really hungry for squatting, man. And so when I started the squat everyday journey, I just went in hard, and I wanted to squat every day. I had so much hunger in me to squat that I was just like, okay, this time around, I'm gonna, be in tune. I'm gonna listen to my body. I'm gonna study this thing. I wanna work this thing out, and I want to be able to squat 300 kilos. That's kind of where it all started in my mind. So there's some history there of training, lots of mistakes, lots of injuries. But now I'm in a space right now that I have this valuable information. So this training log, last night that I went through it, every single time, like I said, every single time there was a PR, there was some patterns there. And so the things that led up to my success in squatting, was boiled down to 4 things. Number 1 was bent over, or I guess you want to call it stiff-legged deadlifts, or RDLs, I guess Romanian deadlifts. So that's kind of the first. When I implemented that, I basically squatted 195 soon after that. And then basically that's the pattern. After that, I implemented good mornings. After that, I implemented the GHDs. So RDLs, good mornings, and GHDs all led me to some sort of a PR in squatting. And then the latest thing, which is basically the most exciting of all, was the high rep squatting. The high rep squatting up to 50, sorted a crisis point really at the start of this year, where it wasn't just my right hip that was hurting, my left hip started hurting. And I don't know how I worked it out. I guess just banging my head against the wall enough. I worked out that the glute, the TFL, both of these structures insert into the ITB. And for the first time I had a conceptualization of what could be causing the TFL to hurt. And when I worked that out, I realized, okay, I need a lot of blood into the glute. That will relax it and it would stop pulling so hard on the ITB and therefore pulling the TFL out of position and inflaming it. And so it was sets of 50. Like you guys remember, like I used to do like a lot of warm-up sets with the squat. That sorted my hips out completely. So 4 things that have kind of each time led to me having success in the squat. Very excited to kind of work this out. So last night I was kind of jotting it down, and in the last page of the training log, I wrote down 4 things. I wrote down RDLs, good mornings, and I wrote down GHDs, and then also I wrote down high rep squats. So this is the recipe for me moving forward. So, we all have troubles. We all have troubles. I'm sure you guys are listening to this and you're like, yeah, I had this trouble, that trouble. Stay with it, work it out. If you can get anything out of what I'm saying here, definitely use it. Use it to your advantage. But basically, I'm making sense of this. Squatting, in my opinion, is the best exercise anyone can do. It's better than the deadlift, which is a close second, only because it has a higher range of motion through the hip and the knee. So that's the reason why it's better. But even the best exercise anyone can do has a lot of drawbacks, especially if you're doing it as frequently as me. And those drawbacks are basically your knees and your hips could potentially hurt. Now, I've spoken volumes about this. I think you usually, well, I guess my experience, I speak for myself. I don't have any knee pain because I think I was doing ATG squats from the get-go. If you do ATG squats, your knees shouldn't hurt. However, what my experience is, if you do ATG squats, your hips might start hurting. So the guys that squat parallel, their knees might start hurting, but I rarely hear people talking about hip pain with parallel squatters. So pick your poison. If you're an ATG squatter and you have a hip pain, I would say to you, man, smash the glutes and the hamstrings. We know with high bar squatting, the quads get a lot of attention and the glutes get a lot of attention. And maybe that combination, especially if you're doing it heavy and often, that combination pulls the ITB out of whack, and the ITB gets pulled out of whack and it pulls on the TFL, and then you get all sorts of pain. You lose your internal rotation ability, and then when you lose your internal rotation of the hip, then you're really up shit creek. So anyway, that's kind of what I got out of my training log. I'll continue to look at it. I mean, there's also the bench press and the deadlift. I've also kind of done push-ups, so there's a lot for me to kind of look through. And now that the training log is kind of like at the desktop, the computer desktop, I'll be peeking at it and looking at it all the time. But if you don't keep a training log and you are interested in getting stronger, man, you got to start today. Buy a textbook, buy something, a notebook with a hardcover that can last you for years, and start writing down every single exercise that you do, every single training session. That's going to serve you as an invaluable resource moving forward. You're going to always be able to kind of go back and study the periods leading up to your successful periods, right? You can't buy this shit anyway. So do yourself a service and just buy this thing, start tracking your stuff if you are serious about whatever goal you want to do in terms of training. All right, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.